Okay, here we go. About to launch into episode 40 of the podcast. Tap to record, here we go. So, this is how it's done. Let's start, shall we? Episode number 40. Ready, steady, go. Greetings, lovely people, and welcome to the Dread in the Shed podcast. I am Daddy Cam of the One Love Army, and I am sitting on my bed telling my stories. Now, where was I? That's right, I eventually reached 1983 and I became a dad, and that was fantastic, and I don't think I can kind of talk about that enough. There's so much more to say. It's such a life-changing experience, and as I say, my feet haven't touched the ground since. But after finishing that last episode, I thought, there's a few loose ends and a few things I didn't mention and I should have mentioned, because of course you try and cover a year in 20 minutes. You're never going to do it, are you? So a couple of things I remember, and I'll in no particular order. One of them, I spoke about when I was arrested in Victoria Park in my lunch break, having a spliff with my friend Andrew Witter. But what I didn't mention was the slight bit of humour there, apart from the fact of me pulling down my trousers and my pants without being asked to. Apart from that, was the fact that I brought this nice drawer of, it was Redbeard again, Redbeard Sensimelia. And I'd brought it in, and I'd managed to roll my spliff. And Witter had actually just rolled his, and I remember looking at him, and he just perfected it, and he was admiring his handiwork. He didn't even get to light it when those 5 officers came round from behind and took it off of him. They took mine, but I'd have managed to get a couple of tokes in, and so not so bad for me. And I also remember mentioning that when they finally let me out of the police station, that I had a £5 note in my pocket. And the reason why I mentioned it is because I knew, because they'd been to my house and taken every little scrap and stick and twig of weed that they could, that I had nothing at home. So I went straight from Bethnal Green police station, and I went down to Sandringham Road, and I went and got myself a nice £5 drawer. Now, back in those days, you'd get probably like 3-4 grams or whatever, 3.5 grams for a tenner. Not like nowadays where you might get a gram. But so I went and I got myself a little drawer. I thought, I'm not going home and having no weed there. And I got home and went upstairs, and poor Kate, of course, had the police had been there. But there's my friends sitting there. I don't know if it was Liz was there, and Asher was there, and a fellow called Chrissy Barker, Liz Payne, and Asher. So it's about 3 of them sitting there. And I thought, wouldn't it have been nice if they've clubbed together, knowing I've just been raided and they've been cleaned out, and they clubbed together and got me a little something. But no. So I come in the door and I've produced my £5 drawer, and they all looked at me and said, "We knew you'd get something." I thought, hey, friends, Hey, you know what I mean? Yeah, you would have thought differently, but no. Another thing I didn't mention was, when I turned up with the police originally, when I was handcuffed, of course I didn't want the neighbours seeing me handcuffed to these plainclothes officers, by the way. And so they put a jacket over the handcuffs to preserve my modesty, if you like. So when Kate threw down the keys, she had no idea I was under arrest, and because it was the time of Sun Ra and myself putting together this benefit for Ethiopia, she was just thinking I'd kind of roped in some recruits to help us, and that's what these fellas who were with me, who they were. So whilst I was expecting Kate to be panicking and throwing stuff out the window, she had no idea at all. She was busy ironing at the time and looking after Trin, and of course my delaying tactics were to no avail. But I found that really funny as well. That was funny. I insisted on grabbing the pram and making progress up the stairs as slow as possible. But anyway, just a couple of things I thought I'd mention. And then, of course, I'd mentioned that I'd failed my exams, or failed 3 of the 4 exams, and passed one of them. And that means that was actually turned out to be the end of my academic career. I didn't actually get back. I remember there's a spoiler for 1984. I didn't actually get back to North London Polytechnic. But before I left, there was an episode or something that took place where we occupied the Polytechnic. Now, the Polytechnic had a few buildings. One was the main one in Holloway Road, which wasn't where I was. I was in a building in Ladbroke House, Highbury Grove, around that way. So that's where the social sciences department was. But there was another building across the road from the main building, which later became the Rocket musical venue. And for some reason, led by Sylvia Harkinson, Daisy Ball from that famous episode, Daisy Ball, who was so much part of my political and spiritual awakening. And for some reason I can't remember, was it because of cuts to funding, or we decided to occupy the building. So it led by Sylvie Harkinson and myself and a few others, we occupied the building. I think the occupation went on for about a week, day and night, and we got a bit of attention. I'm sure the press were interested. But at that time, North London Polytechnic was a hotbed of socialist idealism and so on and so forth. Quite a lot of revolutionaries in there. I don't know if we achieved anything, but it was fun. That's all I know. I'm just going to mention that's what we did. It was fun. So here we are, 1983. A few little strokes, extra little brush strokes in there to paint a better picture. And I'm working at Victoria Park. Okay, yeah, I'm arrested. Yeah, fine. And I do recall going back in on the Monday, because it was a Friday afternoon. They nicked me, and of course my clothes, my jacket and normal shoes were still there. And we had a foreman, can't remember his name, ginger fella, but he was all right. And he said to me, "What happened to you Friday?" He said, I said to him, "I got nicked." He said, "I thought you did." So they had some idea I'd got nicked, but they didn't let on to management. So that's a brilliant foreman. He didn't tell the manager. Management was none the wiser, and I just got back in on the Monday and we rocked on. So that job, I think, went up until October-ish. And it was a good job. It was a great job. And I remember times they were a-changing. One day, I worked with this Scottish fella, Brian, his name was. And there were a couple of girls that I think Faye, the names are coming back to me, Faye and another girl worked there. And then one day there was another, you've got female, long hair, brown, patent leather boots, strange green dress. And Brian said to me, "Hey, what do you reckon of her? What do you reckon of her?" This was, and I was like, there was nothing particularly attractive about this particular person. And as it turns out, this person was a pre-op transsexual. Now, this was 1983, so this was all pretty new still. It was, I think the whole gay scene was just beginning to kind of come out into the open a lot more. I think, from the end of the 60s, things had opened up. When I was at secondary school, there was still such a thing as queer bashing and so on. So there was a lot of discrimination against homosexuals. But I can't remember this person's name, but I wish I could. Anyway, she or he came to work as a park labourer, which was quite an interesting job, because it's quite it was, forgive me for being sexist, quite an odd job for a woman, park labouring. I'm sure there's, lots of women doing that kind of thing now. But again, as I say, times were a-changing. And I actually got to know him, her. I can't remember his or her name. And him or her started to wait for me at the bus stop in the morning, kind of came in the same route, used to sit next to me. I'll be honest, I used to find it embarrassing. Not my kind of thing. And I was still, maybe a little bit prejudiced, shall we say, and a little bit embarrassed, because she used to come and sit next to me, and people used to look because big hands, quite big boned, long hair, and a very strange fashion sense. Like I said about the brown patent boots and the green dresses and stuff. I think she then used to wear jeans, but with the same kind of boots. And but I did get to know her. She spoke about what she was doing. Having to live 6 months as a woman before she could have the operation, and how growing up she'd been conflicted with her gender, and had joined the army to prove to himself at the time that how manly he was, so he could have a fight, but he decided that he was a woman. And I do recall being outside the park one day, and a car full of young cockneys pulled up, and they started hurling abuse, you da 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 da, queer da 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 da. And I said, do you get a lot of that? And she said, yeah. She said, but I've left people in pools of blood. I've left people in pools of blood over that kind of thing. So yeah, she could have a tear up. But bless her, she used to want to talk about washing machines and things like that to the other girls, and the other girls weren't interested. So she tried to be girly with the girls, but the girls weren't really girly girls. And what was it? Yeah, and always combing her hair at lunch break, sitting at the table combing her hair. Bless. Yeah, but there you go. So I was slowly waking up to a lot more stuff, and I do recall as well the Christmas. It would have been Christmas 1982, and going to the Polytechnic party, and that evening coming home with 4 men. Well, 4 men in the car was the fourth one. 3 gay men and myself in the car. Now, I didn't have any problem with my sexuality. I didn't have any problem with homosexuality. But it was all very new to me because, of course, back in the day, as a Rasta man, you're born fire upon that kind of thing there, you see. But life was showing me, the old world and the new world. And, of course, the new world in which we live, genders are blurred, sexuality is whatever it is. And, yeah, we've come a long way. Now then, I'm mentioning that possibly because I'd like to say, and I'm going to claim the title, as the original new man. Now, why was I the original new man? How did I become the original new man? I'll tell you how. Because there I was a student, okay, and I'd flopped my exams, and I'd spoken to my tutor, and we decided I'd take a gap year. I'd take a gap year and sort myself out, and then get back to my academic career, once I'd sorted myself out. Now, Kate had meanwhile qualified as a state registered SRN, RSCN, and registered children's nurse as well. So, so she'd qualified as a nurse, passed her exams, and she was a qualified nurse, and therefore her earning capability was higher than mine. So by the time Trinity reached 3 months and Kate's maternity leave was over, it was time for me to become the house husband, as it were. Now, there weren't that many at the time. I mean, nowadays I love to see all the dads taking their children to school, dads pushing buggies. But back in the day, early 80s and in the 70s, you didn't really see that many men pushing buggies and prams and so on and so forth. But let me tell you, I loved that little McLaren buggy. And yeah, we'd race anyone, we'd beat anyone. I had such fun with that McLaren buggy. And so that was me, the new man. So I was the stay-at-home dad. And it was a fantastic experience. I think that time when children are pre-language, when you have to communicate through other means, and you establish a kind of telepathy, and you get to kind of communicate with a child without language. And so I did. And I do recall one morning, I might have mentioned this before, but Sunra Francis, my good friend Sunra, he'd split up with his girlfriend, and he'd taken to staying up all night and then coming over to me about 9 o'clock in the morning, having not slept. He'd go days without sleep, and there'd be me, kind of, Kate would have gone off to work. I'd be changing nappies and sorting out baby's breakfast and so on and so forth. And of course, Trin would be screaming and crying, and as babies do, it's their job. And I remember him saying to me, "She will teach you patience." Well, I kind of, in my mind, I said, "What the F do you know? What, if you'd just gone with your life and got out of the way, it wouldn't be such a stressful thing." But anyway, I think I did learn patience. And I learnt, in a very strange way, how to have a child screaming and crying, which they do, knowing that this is good exercise for their lungs. And I think if you have fed your child, burped your child, winded your child, and if you've changed that child's nappy and that child still would like to cry and cry some more, I realise it's okay to go and put them in their cot, in their crib, close the door, come into the living room, close the door, put on some Bob Marley, some Third World or whatever, Ijaman Levi, have a cup of tea, and give it 20 minutes. Let your baby cry. And how does that cry not agitate? It's designed to agitate the hell out of you. It's designed to get a parent off a parent's backside. And that's what it does on a deep psychological level. Your baby crying will kind of get you up and agitate you. It will make you do something. How did I do that? Well, let me tell you. It's a bit dark, but it's true. At the time, there were a lot of cot deaths. And cot deaths were going around, and we were being told not to lay our babies on their front, or to lay them on their side, or not to lay them on their back. There's all these different theories, and so on and so forth. And what I did in this particular instance, I thought, imagine, perish the thought, but imagine if you come into your baby's crib, into baby's room, baby's in the crib, and baby's blue, baby's not breathing, and you're looking at your baby now. Now, if your baby suddenly went wah and screamed, it would be music to your ears. Your baby's alive, and that's how I did it. So that sound of my baby crying became music to my ears. My baby was alive, my baby had been fed, my baby had been burped, winded, my baby had a clean nappy, my baby was in a comfortable cot, there was no wolf at the door, nothing was going to harm my baby, so my baby could cry. My baby's crying could be music to my ears. So there's a handy little tip for you parents, or parents to be, when your baby's crying, let it be music to your ears. Anyway, that's an 18 minute episode. Not bad. We're going to get on to 1984 soon, but I think I'll leave that for another episode. So that was just tying up some loose ends from 1983. And yeah. So for now, I would like to say thank you all for listening. I'd like to say, One Love Army, I salute you. All of my listeners, I salute you. Wherever you are in the world, whatever you're doing, it's blessed love from the dread in the shed who's sitting on his bed. Yeah, give thanks. Thank you for joining me. I will be back. Alright, one love. That's that. That's how we do.